I'm very glad and relieved to see that there are some kids also in the audience, in the hope that the questions that they possibly ask me would kind of let me off the hook a bit. Adults scare me most of the times. The topic says never say fail. Theatre is liberal indoctrination. So I'm going to talk a little bit about whatever the idea of this liberal indoctrination could be, because the two terms seem contradictory to each other. If you're liberal, why would you want to indoctrinate? And if you're indoctrinating, how would you be liberal? But we'll come a bit to that a little later in my talk. Basically, how many of you regularly watch plays? Just to get an idea. Oh, wonderful. How many of you watch children's theatre? Okay, well, that's part of your job, Riddhi, so thank you. I sincerely hope you watch children's theatre.
But I also watched plays before also. I've seen your play before my job.
Thank you for the vote of confidence. And how many of you have seen any of my plays? Oh, what a pleasure. Yes, you work with me. Thank you, Chirag. Great, wonderful. So it's a relief to know that there are some people who are, not that it's a hindrance if you haven't seen my work, but there could be a kind of point of reference even when we have a bit of an interaction through my talk or after the talk also. We have about 90 minutes, right? Total maximum? Okay. Okay. So we could go about this. I could talk a little bit about my work. If at any point in time you feel like asking a question, please do so, especially if it gives you a better understanding of what I'm talking about at that point in time. And if we feel that there is something that could go on later on into the general interaction as part of the pool of questions that you want to ask, we'll just put that question on ice and ask it a little later on. Is that okay? The most difficult thing about talking to people, and a lot of you are people I don't know from behind, is my journey as an artist. Because for me, absolutely every moment of my life as an artist is fascinating. But I'm not too confident of how much of it may have universal appeal or relevance to you who's sitting here. So let me kind of start with my own love for theatre and where it kind of came from. I was lucky to go to schools which had a great theatre culture in them. So my father was in the railways, and so I travelled all over India going to various different schools. They were all good schools. Most of them were missionary schools, what we call mission or public schools. My first memory of being on stage was some sort of a short performance in which I was a soldier. And so I was dressed as a soldier, and there was one more guy, I still remember his name and face, his name was Dominic. This was in Campion School in Trichy, in Tamil Nadu. And I had a line in which I had to go on as a soldier, and we had those little toy guns, and I had to say, the punchline was, and I hid behind my whiskers and scared away the enemy. Now, in those days, we used to have these horrible moustaches which had pins on them, and they would clip them onto your nasal septum. You know, there was no glue, and of course, because I had to have whiskers which I hid behind and scared away the enemy, they refused to put it on with eyebrow pencil. And I was in the first standard, must have been 5 or 6. So I said, okay, and every time the teacher clipped it on, I had tears in my eyes, and then they would fall off. And the guy, Dominic's moustache would stay on and mine would keep falling off. So I said, teacher, what if this happens when I'm on stage? So she looked at me in an annoyed sort of way and said, just pick it up and get on with it. I said, okay. Now since I went to a convent school, we had just been taught the difference between pronouncing a V and a W. Okay? So V was V and W was... And now these 4 or 6 lines that I had to say on stage had a lot of W's in it. Whiskers. And I went on stage, and every time I said a W word as I'd been taught to, my whiskers fell off on stage. And because the teacher had told me that if they fall off, just pick them up, I picked them up and diligently put them back on, started talking, and they fell off again. to a point where I was left on stage only picking up my whiskers and putting them on, and Dominic had exited stage. So that was my first memorable moment, my introduction to the stage. When I went backstage, I was terrified, but my teacher just looked at me and she burst out laughing and she hugged me. So that was an encouraging sign, I thought. That was how I interpreted it. The next memory I have of being on stage was when I moved to Rajasthan, to this place called Ajmer. Some of you may be familiar with it. To another convent school called St. Anselm's Higher Secondary School. And there we had principals who would have, there was a house system, so there would be 2 or 3 house plays a year, and then there would be an annual function, and then there would be an annual play, and then if you were in the Cubs or in the Scouts, you would have a campfire. So looking back, I feel that actually back then there was much more theatre as an integral part of growing up in school than today, when we have neatly compartmentalized kind of subjects and everyone acknowledges the importance of the arts, but somehow there's just not enough time to fit it in there. For example, when I went to school, these days we have very active parent-teacher associations where parents actively go to school and are part of the running of the school and kind of contribute. The only time I remember my parents being called to school was if I'd done something so horribly wrong that I needed to be disciplined and shamed with the presence of my parents. So this has been a bit of a shift in the education. So the second time this was in Ajmer in St. Anselm's School, and I had to play Dame Trick Trot from Enid Blyton, if you're familiar with Blyton's work. So we used to adapt a lot of these stories, and it was a boys' school, and I was asked to play a girl, which was a huge affront to my dignity and to my whatever manhood I had in the 3rd or 4th standard. And then when the second play they insisted on casting me as a girl again, I took a firm stand and said no, which was a rare thing because some instinct must have told me you're being typecast as an actor, so you should be very careful. So that is the second. Well, through the 10 years odd that I was in the school, I managed to do at least 20 plays because of the lovely principal and the teachers that I had. And looking back now from this point to why I ended up here, there seems to be a reason. But then there were many other students who also did at least another 5, 7, 10 plays who aren't doing theatre today. But I thank my school for that. The third play, which I'll talk about from school, was something called the annual play. Now this annual play was something that everyone died to get into. And the reason being that in this play, even though we were a boys' school, boys were not trained to play the roles of girls. Girls used to be imported from the other girls' schools in Ajmer. So there was great incentive to be a part, and a lot of lobbying used to happen, and a lot of kind of cutthroat competition, and then 4 or 5 chosen boys would get to be part of this play. So I was part of a play called Poor Old Perkins, in which I played a lover, a suitor, if you could call it that. It was an old-fashioned play, a comedy, and come to think of it, I did manage to get my first girlfriend in life because of the play. So somewhere dimly at the back of my mind, maybe I understood that the theatre was a cool place to hang around in. It was a nice place to be in. Simultaneously, I don't know if you've managed to read the little kind of write-up that Junoon has given about me. I had a great love for cricket. Now, cricket, of course the game, but for any small-town boy in this country, back in the 70s and the 80s, cricket was a metaphor. It was this big dream that you lived. You dreamt of playing for India one day. No matter how good or bad you were, you wanted to play for India. And fortunately or unfortunately, I happened to be good at academics. So being an actor or playing for India were not career options for someone who was good at academics. But this whole dream of wanting to be a cricketer was what helped me move from Ajmer and convince my parents and come to Bombay. I had no clue that I wanted to do theatre seriously when I came to Bombay. My parents were fed up. I had done science and then I wanted to change because I didn't want to be a doctor or an engineer. And it was sacrilege back then for a good student to even contemplate a career in arts or commerce. But my suffering parents kind of resigned themselves to the fact that I was maybe a black sheep or maybe I'd come to my senses. So, sorry, before that, do we have any, I lost most of the photographs of my plays in school, but because I lost them in a recent move that I made. But do we have anything at all, Nitin?
I've got just the thing.
Yeah? No, that's the footage from later.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, thanks to that. If you notice, I seem to... No, don't scroll up. It's okay. Well, this is the only surviving performing memory that I have. Notice the lungi, which is almost halfway off. And the two doting girls, well, one doting girl on this side and the other one looks faintly annoyed are my sisters. They were probably rehearsing hard to be part of some Bharatanatyam performance and I must have thrown a tantrum and insisted I wanted a photograph. It does look like that, but I do seem to strike a decent pose. Maybe I did have some latent talent. Can we please take away this embarrassment? This was not supposed to be on the agenda. This is him putting a prank on me. When I came to St. Xavier's College...
State bit also.
Sorry?
There's a video also, no?
Yeah,
That will come a little later. It's not part of my school. I want to get over the school and college part quickly so we can get to the actual...
I insist we see the video.
The video? The video will come when we are as part of the talk because I've chosen a particular point to show. Don't worry, it's there. We just skipped a little ahead and stick. So I came to Bombay and the story, official story was that I wanted to try because Bombay was a place to become a cricketer. They said no, go to Delhi because Delhi was closer to Ajmer, but I said no, I don't want to go to Delhi, I want to go to Bombay because I think Bombay is a cooler place and the people are nicer in Bombay. I'm sure we all know. So I came and I had only 70%, but because it was science and you didn't need 96.8% to get into a college back then, I got into St. Xavier's College. In arts, I switched my faculty and I got the top two subjects, which were economics and statistics, which looking back was a big mistake, but then since I was changing from science to arts, I had to keep my parents happy, saying I'm doing something which has some kind of a career option later on in life. It says never say fail, so I'm making a long list of all my failures to you as a disclaimer straight away. So I was in St. Xavier's College and the best thing about college was the amazing library and the vibrant intercollegiate theatre scene that Bombay had. I can call it Bombay because it was Bombay then. And Mumbai doesn't come easily to my tongue, so kindly substitute Bombay with Mumbai whenever you feel like it. Bombay was, and St. Xavier's and the intercollegiate, it wasn't as huge and as organized as it is. We didn't have multi-crore budgets then. You look at a Malhar today, the St. Xavier's College program, they have corporate sponsorship. You look at Mood Indigo and IIT, they have corporate sponsorship that runs in, you could make a Bollywood film with the kind of sponsorship they get. If I got that kind of sponsorship, I could do the next 10 plays in my career without worrying about it at all. So there were these intercollegiate and there were these writers in the Xavier's library, Vijay Tendulkar, guys who I'd never heard of before. Of course, you've heard of Shakespeare and Bernard Shaw, the French writers, the absurd writers, Jean Genet, Ionesco, Jean-Paul Sartre. Then there was all this huge collection of books out there, coupled with the intercollegiate scene and the fact that I had friends who were all actively doing theatre. Maybe I was lucky to meet them, or maybe I naturally gravitated towards that crowd in college, I don't know. I had already started being active. In the meantime, the cricket dream was drying up and almost dying because When I came to Bombay, I realized that there were 14-year-old kids who were playing much better than I was playing at 18. It was a bit of a harsh reality check. But almost simultaneously, by the time I'd finished my second year in college, I was lucky enough to go for a theatre workshop conducted by the late great Satyajit Dubey. He was having a workshop in the summer holidays in 1990. I just finished my second year in college. It was to be on a preface of Bernard Shaw, so it was prose. And it went on for 40 days, 4 hours a day, every single day. And by the end of that workshop, it was an epiphanic moment for me. I was completely enchanted. I said, this is what I want to do with my life. After which, when I went back to my third year in college, economics and statistics felt like a huge drag. So if I had 95% attendance in the first year, in the third year I must have scraped through with 25. Attendance wasn't 75% compulsory back then. In fact, St. Xavier's College, I don't know if this is a nice thing to say, had a prospectus which officially said smoking is allowed only on the ground floor and in the boys' common room. Yes, those were the times in which I went to college. And of course I went from boys' school in Rajasthan Ajmer to a co-ed college. So it was quite a culture shock and an eye-opener. But by my second year in college, I was completely enchanted. And then from Satyajit Dubey, he pointed me towards Sunil Shanbag. They're all still practicing, big names in the theatre today. From Sunil Shanbag and Satyajit Dubey, I learned a lot. At some point in time, again, my long-suffering parents said, would you like to go to the National School of Drama? And I said very clearly, no, I already have my drama school here. I'm working with the best directors that a young person could hope to work with. And I'm doing it in real time, in real spaces. Instead of removing myself for 3 years on a stipend, I'm not knocking the National School of Drama. I said, I'd rather learn on the job with these wonderful people. I'm getting to climb a catwalk and rig up a net, or rig up a set, or put up a pillar. I'm getting to go and focus lights. I have a dimmer board. Because all these directors are very hands-on people. It was completely the hands-on school of theatre. If you showed eagerness, if you showed you wanted to learn, you were thrown in there and you learned. Okay, so it was sink or swim pretty much. But it was a system. There were many of us who would come and learn and work with these people. In the meantime, I forgot to tell you. I did drop out after my third year for about a year from the theatre, even though I'd done theatre with Dubeji and Sunil, because I had to do an MBA. Yes, at least I had to prove to my parents that I was capable of doing an MBA. So I studied for a year and I got through the MBA, the Mumbai University MBA exams, and I got admission in NM College. I was 15th in the university or something. And I attended lectures for about a week. And I realized that I'd been told that at the end of these 2 years there's a spot of gold. Get a job and then you can continue doing theatre. But I would begin classes at 7 a.m. and wind up at 10 and still have assignments to finish. I said, if college is this bad, I don't imagine my job being any better when I get out. So I remember waking up one morning in the hostel at 5 a.m. and running. Literally running away from my MBA. And luckily I still had an admission going for my MA in economics at Kalina University, and I had a hostel room. So I ran all the way from NM College back to Kalina, went and locked myself up in that room and didn't inform my parents about where I was for a week and cancelled my admission in the MBA without informing them. When I look back, coming from where my parents did honest government employees and my mother was a homemaker, I think they were amazingly liberal, since we on about the word liberal today. And of course long-suffering. So I dropped out of this MBA and they gave me a full refund. They were shocked. They said, you're dropping out of an MBA. And I said, yes, and why? Have you been dragged? Or do you find the course is not? And I said, no, it's got nothing to do with you. It was a bit of a breakup. It's like, no, it's not you, it's me. So I had to tell them that no, it's about me and I'm not interested in doing an MBA, and they were so relieved that they gave me a full refund of my fees. 16,000 rupees was a huge amount of money and they could have kept it. This was what, 1992 I think. After this began a phase of the drama school, as I said, in which I worked with these great directors, doing lights, doing backstage, doing production, doing operating sound, learning acting, getting the occasional role here and there, sometimes a main role, sometimes a supporting role, sometimes a chorus, stuff like that. But children's theatre hadn't really happened to me till then. So this was the period, say, from 90 to 98. How much time did you have?
Half an hour.
Half an hour, really? Okay. One memory I have, an anecdote from college, was that in one of the after I joined the UAG, we had done a play, and there was a collegiate an elimination round within the college, and I had this chip on my shoulder, and I learned a lot, and I was very kind of brash about the fact that I learned from such a good way, and we got eliminated in the college elimination round, and I went up to the professor and said, why did we get eliminated? I thought we were better. And she said, yes, you were better, but your play was an absurd play, and we thought the other play was more relevant to student life. So that was my first encounter with being better, but still kind of our play also was called striptease, so that had something to do with it. It wasn't a striptease in that sense, it was an East European play which spoke about the totalitarian state and how it kind of subjugated its, but the professors didn't get it. They felt that the play was much more. So this was my learning curve. 1998 or so, after having worked with all these plays, I'd heard of this person called Rami Ramanathan. Some of you may have heard of him. He's a very, very prolific playwright. Has been writing for about 20 years now. I've done many of his plays as director and producer. He kind of called me one day and said, I've written this play for children, and would you like to be a part of it? And that was The Boy Who Stopped Smiling, the first version of The Boy Who Stopped Smiling, which was in 1998, and she said Sanjana Kapoor is producing it. It was also the first time in my entire career that I actually been asked to read a script and tell him if I was interested in doing the play. Till then, God forbid, do wait, he's saying, ये लो ये script है, तुम अगर करना चाहो तो मुझे बता देना. So I was quite chuffed about the fact, and then he also said Sanjana Kapoor is going to produce it, and I had kind of been meeting Sanjana on and off, and I loved the play. Now the nice thing about the play, what it set off, there's some footage about it, was the fact there's one photograph. Unfortunately, the rest of them, those were not digital times, so that's me with my leg, he's my father. I played the boy back then. That's Shiv Subramanian, that's Lata Sharma, that's Divya Chakkade, all of them still active theatre people in the Bombay theatre scene. There's an article, it's a write-up. This is hardcore that's been photographed. It wasn't the digital age, and we weren't too hot about documentation or anything back then. We had no sense of history. But this play was very interesting because it was in the grips format. If you heard of the grips form of theatre, it was started in the 60s by Volker Ludwig in Berlin, and it chose real life issues which Volker Ludwig felt children needed to be sensitized about. So it went away from fairies and wicked witches and rabbits and lions and stuff like that, took real life issues, and it was a kind of a format in which you had song and dance, and adult professional actors would play the roles of children too. So there was that distancing so that you understand the underlying issues in the play. So it was educative, but in a very, very, very informal sort of a way, and a very entertaining sort of way. And this grips theatre was a huge eye-opener for me, because it matched my sensibility of doing something that's relevant, not escapist, but in an entertaining way. And Sanjana Kapoor as a producer ensured that this play not only we did about 150 shows in just about 2.5 years, which is a phenomenal number of shows for any play to do, and it was unheard of in children's theatre in India back then. So we traveled to, we had repeat audiences, cult audiences in Bombay which had seen the play, kids who had seen the play 16 times, 17 times, 18 times. They would come, and before they came in, if they were recognized, there would be someone who would beg them not to blurt out the lines before the actor on stage took the lines, because there were other children who hadn't seen the play. And we travelled to Kerala, we travelled to Calcutta, we travelled to Rajasthan, we travelled to Rajkot, Ahmedabad, Delhi, 5 or 6 places in Kerala. Within Bombay also we had there were morning shows, sometimes there would be afternoon shows. And it was the first time I saw, firstly, the potential of theatre for children, and secondly, the great vacuum that is there in quality work, quality theatre for children in the country. And I started taking an interest in other plays for children that were happening, and it was quite dismal, because most of them either talked at children or patronized them, or were stuck in the same formula of taking a story and presenting it in a cutesy manner, which frankly I felt insulted the intelligence of the younger people. They assume that kids need to be spoken to in that manner, which I found extremely annoying. And the fact that I have some, it's difficult to, because there is no footage of the play, despite the fact that we did 150 shows. Like I said, we were very poor on documentation. Some children came backstage to meet the actors. They could, it was open house. So after a show at the theatre, they came backstage, and it was one of the initial shows, so you could smoke backstage then. So I had lit up, and so had some of the actors who were playing the parents' role. There were 3 kids and 3 adults in the play. The boy who stopped smiling, and the children came backstage and they were shocked. And they started whispering amongst themselves. And then Ramu, the director, came to me and said, "Could you please stub out your cigarette and not smoke immediately after shows of this particular play? Because they can't seem to make the distinction that you are an adult actor playing a child. So you must not be so brutal with their feelings." I had no idea. I hadn't done it intentionally. So that was the power of convincing a child to enter your world. That if they saw another time, there was a child who called up, got my number through Ramu, called me up and said, "I want to talk to Malhar." And I said, "Yes, this is Malhar talking." I said, No. The child said, "I want to talk to Malhar." And I chuckled and I said, "Yes, this is Jaimini Pathak, this is Malhar talking." And there was silence, and then he turned to the grown-up next to him and said, "Aap to koi uncle baat kare chhe." So I was gobsmacked by the power of doing theatre for children, which really had something to say. Another time we were in Jaipur and we were supposed to do, I think, 4 shows in 2 days, or maybe 6 shows in 3 days. And there was a mini riot outside the theatre because there were children and parents who had gathered saying, "We want another show, or we're not going to let you leave Jaipur." Because they were so starved for any quality. Okay, grown-ups, okay, the National School of Drama or something, there's a Jawahar Kala Kendra there, they're doing stuff and it happens, There's also an incident that I regret, maybe I shouldn't bring it up. Later on in the question answer session, if you remember, and you ask me what was the incident regarding the boy stop smiling, that I regret, maybe I'll get it. But I won't bring it up right now, especially because there are children.
The children will be there in the question answer section, you might as well just...
If they remember, it's a bit of a trick. But this is what stayed with me. The immense power, and also the fact that Grips Theatre wanted to see the world from the child's point of view. It didn't talk down at children, it didn't mollycoddle them, it didn't want to take them into a fairyland or an escape route. And I slowly started taking an interest in doing workshops for schools as a theatre professional. But it wasn't until 1996 that I did, as a director and producer, my first play for children. The Indian Express had been coming out with stories about the flight of the tiger that was kind of being decimated, and numbers had dropped to 1,000 gone over India or something. And I have a great love for wildlife and nature in general. So I went and met Bittu Sehgal. I wrote, it was the first and unfortunately the last professional play I did. Because it was for children, I had the courage. I wrote a play called Once Upon a Tiger. I took the format of the Cribs Theatre, which was to use adult actors for the roles of children. I had also attended a workshop on Forum Theatre. Forum is something that started in Brazil, Augusto Boal, in which they would do a short performance which would have an undesirable ending. And then the audience was invited, children, adults, however, whoever, to change the undesirable ending. So I wrote this play, Once Upon a Tiger. I took it to Bittu Sehgal. I read it out to Bhavin Thakur, and they said it must be done. And Bittu also gave me a little bit of money to do the play in a rehearsal space. And we did that, and again that play did 150 shows. We use an interactive format. It was a big thing for a play to take the risk of interacting with young children. What happens is you're suspending the action of the play and actually asking them questions. Until they answer those questions, the play cannot move forward. So it was unheard of at that point in time. You want to show them a bit of a clip? Just so that you get an idea of the interactive nature of the play. Kids all around.
Yeah, fantastic. Anyway, and what does the deer normally eat? Grass. And what else? Now what do those tiny wobblers eat? Those small baby birds, what they eat? Insects, caterpillars, that kind of thing. And what's the insects and caterpillars eat? Exactly. But tiger. What is any of this has to do with tiger? Simple. What would happen if we take the wobblers out of the picture? But how?
Then no one will be doing the insect. Because one thing is missing. The whole
Correct. Well, I've got the whole picture. But then if the wobblers don't exist, then what's going to happen next in life? Insects, and what do insects do? So if insects eat up all the plants, then what will happen? Wait, someone move this side, tell me. There will be no air. No food for who? Correct. And if there's no food for the deer, then what happens? And many such food chains make up what we call the great big web of life of which you and me are a part. Oh, like www of life. The wobblers eat the insects and the insects eat the plants. The deer eats the plants too and the tiger eats the deer. So the tiger and the deer and the plants and the wobblers and the insects and the caterpillar all need each other. Hand in hand and round and round, the wheel keeps on turning. Everything in the food chain will forever keep on turning. And you and me and the big green tree and the blue sky and the big blue sea, we're part of the same family that we call the web of life. That we call the web of life. Oh yeah.
That's basically taking grips, where adult professional actors play kids, and forum theatre, using these. So forum theatre stops the play, interacts with the audience, gets their answers. I had to tell my actors that however annoying the children may be, or however way out their answers may be, you have to keep smiling through it on principle. The person who was actually asking all the questions didn't like kids too much before he started doing this play. And by the time he kind of finished with the play, he said, hey, they're not so bad. So it's a growth process for us also. When we're going there and we're opening ourselves out saying, now I don't know, there might be a riot, these kids might just take this play anywhere, and we have no... These were just 200 children at Prithvi. We've done the play for 1,500 children when we've travelled in Jaipur. Because there they're saying, oh, a play is coming from Bombay, we want the whole school to watch the play. So there's first standard to 12th standard sitting there. Now 12th standard is canoodling in the back of the auditorium, and first standard is bawling and whatever. Through that you're performing your play. But these schools have called us repeatedly, so it's not as if it was futile. The thing about it is the relevance of this. After one of the shows at Prithvi, I was told that there was supposed to be a birthday party. The play also talks about the connections, not just the tiger being a symbol for the forest, groundwater, rain, rivers. And there was a factory of Coca-Cola in Plachimada in Kerala that had been shut down because it was depleting the groundwater. So that was also part of the play, of course in this kind of an entertaining format. And we talked about that, about the groundwater being depleted. So, just to tell you an anecdote, I was told later on that there was supposed to be this birthday party outside between the cafe, and it was a mini flop because all the kids refused to drink. So, I mean, when people say, oh, do you think art can bring about change? I say, well, I'm at least grabbing the younger ones. I don't know about the older ones, but I'm grabbing them young. So an example of liberal indoctrination is grab them young, but don't feed them the wrong stuff. There was another mother who called me one day and she said, look, I'm an audience member and could you please email me the lyrics of the song? So I said, yes, I could, but why do you want the lyrics of the song? She said, my son saw your play 3 days ago and he's been driving me nuts singing only one line of the song. So could you please email me the rest of the song so that I don't go crazy? Now that son still comes and watches all our plays and is a regular at Prithvi Theatre and all the workshops, and he signed up as a volunteer 10 years later. So yes, it's not so innocent. I'm also creating a future audience for the theatre. Grabbing them young is make them love the theatre, do stuff for them, and out of a batch of 100, you might get 5 people who want to come back and be part of, like this one. I know her for a long time. Now she's come all the way for this talk. Now that she's in college, I'm going to grab her soon. Somehow. So this play also travelled all over India. It was a huge team of 14 people, which is humongous even by world standards, but we did more than 150 shows. We travelled all over India, from the north to the east to the west, and people just opened their hearts and they said, it's so wonderful that you're doing something like this for children. The next play that we did, again, educative, informative, but entertaining. Stagecraft comes first. It's not a play in which the kids are going to yawn after 15 minutes saying, when is this version going to end? The second play we did, again, looked at the world in the child's point of view. It's called Day I Met the Prince. It's based on the legend of the Little Prince, written by a Singaporean playwright called Tuo Paapun. We got funding for this play from the IFA, India Foundation for the Arts. It was very kind of them because we wanted to do something which was spectacular within the budget that we had. Shall we just show them a clip? Again, it talks about a child's point of view, how the child looks at the education system, the need for understanding, the need for recognizing and respecting one another's identity. Issues like that which are increasingly becoming important, I feel, in today's world, even in schools. There is this huge competitive environment and kids get laptops from the first standard and they're supposed to be wired with knowledge which I have my doubts about how they are processing the knowledge into learning. Anyway, let's watch that.
The grown-ups closing up the drawing room.
Inside or outside of the classroom, no more such drawing. It's time to go to school.
Trying to go to school.
So I started going to school. And in school they had a drawing class. I couldn't help myself. I drew my picture number 1 and gave it to the teacher. Oh, class, isn't this a lovely drawing of a hat? We should give her a star for it, shouldn't we? Not a hat, sir. Fine. Before I could explain. Okay, now everyone draw me another picture. This time draw my school sports day. Go! Sports day? Sports day? What is so special about sports day, huh? Hey, I've got it! No, I've got it! The finishing line. The line that everyone tries to touch before everyone else. That's special. So I gave my teacher my first day drawing. One straight line across the entire length of my drawing paper. The teacher looked at my drawing this way. I'm happy. I'm done. Scratched her head, round her face, and gave me a 0. I decided never to draw again. But I had to do something in drawing class. This time, to make it easier for the teacher to understand, I drew the inside of the puzzle.
What is this? Is this supposed to be the work of a sensible student? Huh? Now go and draw me a portrait. Draw a person. Go!
This time, I didn't even stick. I drew a big circle on my white sheet and I gave it to the teacher.
Oh, so you're trying to play the fool, huh? You think you're too smart? Outside the class. Outside the class. This instant. Go!
What was so wrong? No, I wasn't playing the fool. It was a very honest portrait. It was. This teacher, she's always schooling us. And when she's yelling, she opens her mouth so wide that we can't see her face anymore, only her mouth. So what was so wrong with drawing a big circle for a picture? Better.
Yeah, that's it basically. The child's point of view as opposed to the grown-up point of view. Then it goes on, if you know the legend of the Little Prince, he has a goat and he has a rose, and how does he protect the rose from being eaten up by the goat? And the poor Pakun works it in such a way that at the end of it, he says that the goat doesn't eat roses anyway, it eats grass, and the rose has thorns to protect it, so we can live with our differences in a nutshell. Now we used stage magic to make this come alive for the children. So that was the stagecraft, the unique point of this play. The third play that we did in 2012 was called the Kachra Tales. Now it was again an original script written by Nayanthara Roy. 2012 was quite a turbulent time in the country. There was this entire political turmoil that was happening. The 2014 elections were not too far away. 2002 had already happened in Gujarat. It was a kind of a long curve that we were arriving at. And to her credit, Nayanthara Roy wrote an extremely political play in an extremely child-friendly manner. So we took nonsense, literary nonsense from Alice in Wonderland, from Through the Looking Glass, Upton Nash, Sukumar Rai, his father who wrote Abol Tabol and used to have a magazine, of course translated into English. Many of these nonsense writers and created a narrative in which there is a sweeper boy called Kachra and there is his friend called Kanda, and Kanda he was named Kanda in the play because his mother thought that was it's like calling someone Sona, because the price of onions had they said tumko Sona nahi, tumko Chandi nahi, tumko Kanda bulai. So and the play kind of went from reality into this down the rabbit hole kind of thing, and then in that parallel universe of madness there was a mad despotic king. And then we went into this using, and Alice in Wonderland and all these have these segments which are quite scary. When the off with his head, off with her head, all those segments, they may seem like innocent humor. So it was kind of put into a format which was giving a message of, firstly, Kanda is in love with this film actress and actor who become the alter egos in the dream world. So the actor was someone who's run over some people in R.A. Built colony, for example, and the actress was someone who had done something. So there was this parallel, so that you could kind of link it back, saying there was this uncle and this mother who kind of become other characters in the dream world, a little bit like the Wizard of Oz, if you please. But the point that was being made through this was A, dubious roles, and B, be careful of the choices you make even as children. Be aware that these are the problems that exist in the real world. Of course, it was very entertaining, full of madness. Again, a huge mega cast of 12 actors. After which, I had sworn to myself I'd do a small play, but that didn't happen. I did A Boy Who Stopped Smiling, which was again a team of 10. I think you can skip this clip. You're slightly short on time. Skip the Kachra clip. How much time do we have? About 40 minutes more?
6:20.
Yeah, about 40 minutes more. Yeah. Is that okay if we skip just one clip?
Please.
Okay. It's difficult to explain the play through a clip. So we are talking about creating a magical journey. It's more about the stagecraft. Now these kids who are talking to this guy who's talking about something, who's speaking a nonsense speech from Through the Looking Glass, when there is this guy who talks about it was brilliant and the slightly toes, but that was connected to the story of the play in an extremely entertaining and relevant manner. And then at the end of it, Kachra and Kanda have to disappear into a tunnel. Now, how, if you don't have a West End or a Broadway budget, or a Disney producing your play, do you create a tunnel on the stage of, say, a Prithvi Theatre? So this was our humble attempt at creating a tunnel. I hope you like it.
Don't tell me later, I didn't want you up. What the line? There is how to get out.
That's a map that the old man has been sitting on all the time. They're in prison. Now that's magic water he's collecting. This old man has been put in jail by the despotic ruler in the dream world. This family has been wiped
I
out.
was like 11 seconds. Now we were 10 years to get out of here and then it is.
That's Kanda, that's Kanda. Managed to squeeze some applause out of the audience even with a simple device like a silver sheet on one side which is blue on the inside which has been sewn together. You know, well, necessity or poverty is the mother of invention. So, this has been our approach. Whenever we do a play, especially for children, my standing instructions to my long-suffering and very supportive set designers are the entire set should fit into under 2 berths of a train. You know, so everything is folding and everything is easily replaceable. Cloth, use fabric. We can't simply afford to go to Jaipur one day and Chandigarh the next and insist on airfares or separate. Yeah, it's all operating within a tight budget. So they supported this vision of mine throughout. About 2 years ago, I revisited The Boy Who Stopped Smiling as director and producer because I felt that the things that the play was talking about, which is parental expectation as opposed to a child's dreams and what a child wants to do in life, or even at that particular point in time, were relevant. In fact, they were becoming increasingly relevant because these days there's a plethora of choices which a child theoretically has or which a parent has in mind and which schools are kind of trying to cater to. But it's all quite demanding. So I revisited The Boy Who Stopped Smiling. I didn't play the main role this time because I had nothing new to offer the play. Although I was extremely tempted to do so and I felt extremely possessive about the role, but I did give it away to a younger actor. I played a small role in the play. Shall we watch? We've done about 40 shows in 2 years, which again isn't too bad by Indian children's theatre standards. This time we have sponsorship, of course. Yeah. So this is a scene where Malhar is a little boy. He's obsessed about chess, and his parents don't understand his obsession for chess. They want him to go and play football or join up for gymnastics or karate or swimming, and it's the holidays and he's just sitting at home all day obsessing over chess. Now Malhar's dream is one day to play against Vishwanathan Anand. You know, this play was written in 1998 when Vishwanathan Anand was on the rise. So there's a big thing there. Still is. And Vishwanathan Anand wasn't such a big celebrity back then. So it was still a slightly obscure dream to have. And his mother has just stormed off because she's fed up of this boy. And his father is just finally having a one-on-one conversation with him and asking him a few basic questions in life. After which there's a bit of stagecraft. That this is how again we created a bit of stagecraft with the minimal resources that we have at our yeah, let's go. just an example of the craft, the stage craft. Again, my suffering set designer had to be told two birds of a train. So the chess pieces that you see are actually part of the house when it's a non-real, when it's the real world. They're paper lamps, and the chessboard, which is multicolored, just has a light inside it, and the entire thing transforms into something magical with the use of very basic lighting and a very basic stage design and set design. And then we're back to the real world because all you need to do is switch on a couple of lights at the right moment. I'll move a bit on now because I think we're slightly short on time. About the work I've been doing with schools over the last 10, 12, 15 years. The idea has been to simply create a non-competitive space where children feel safe to come and be themselves and fail if they want. There is no evaluation, especially when I work with schools and they've said, I've had long-term associations, I've had short-term associations with schools. Through Junoon, through Sanjana Kapoor, there have been workshops at Prithvi Theatre. Of course, at Prithvi there's never been any grading, which is also where I learnt the philosophy of theatre being, especially theatre for children, being a non-competitive space where they just come and take it all in and kind of be themselves. Because firstly, there's this great misconception, especially among parents, that if you're in the theatre, you have to be an actor. Now, all the work that I've done with schools is I've opened it out for the children. Sometimes having to sit with the management and convince them that the theatre is multidisciplinary. So there may be children who do not enjoy being on stage, who do not want to be on stage, but who may be good at writing a scene or two, or who may be good at designing a costume, or giving a piece of music, or writing a song, or even assisting me as director. There are different, or forming a production team. So there was one school which still insisted on me grading the students, and this was from 1st standard to 8th standard. So Chirag here also works with me in that school. I kind of devised a system which had 10 criteria of evaluation, and one kid was good at A, the second kid was good at C, B. So at the end of it, everyone managed to get at least a B plus or an A. And then the school called me and said, how can this be? And I said, because that is how it is. It is multidisciplinary, and not everyone can be a genius enough or needs to be brilliant at everything. They have their evaluative subjects anyway. Secondly, what has happened with the theatre that we do with children is that it's meant to be a collaborative space. So when kids come in, it's inclusive. We always sit in a circle as opposed to the classroom where the teacher stands on a platform and the children are arranged on desks or whatever. It's always a circle. The circle is an inherently inclusive formation. It's also a good way of making eye contact with each and every person instead of it, being just, it's inherently authoritarian. This is authoritarian. Also, whenever there's a disciplinary problem, children are asked to step out of the circle and continue observing the circle. And I don't, or Chirag doesn't decide when they can rejoin the circle. So the onus is on them. I say, whenever you feel ready to rejoin the circle, you're welcome to do so. You don't even have to ask my permission. So, sir, now I feel okay, I want to come. Or sometimes for 40 minutes, they're just lolling around in the corner like this, watching what's going on, which is fine. Since it's non-evaluative, I have the luxury of a kid lolling around in a corner but still watching what's going on in the corner of his or mostly his eye. Girls well, I better stop there. I don't want to make any statement which might be. Girls are inherently better women. Okay, they also have longer attention spans. For some reason, they have longer attention spans. They want to connect more. They see larger frameworks. For example, in a school which insisted on putting 1,000 children on stage, I said, can we make a production team? So every child is involved. And we not a scroll at the end on your audio visual. where you give credit to every single child for whatever role he or she has played. And there were girls of the 5th grade lining up to be part of production because they wanted to organize the entire play. And the teachers were like, no, this isn't going to work. I said, let's just try it. To a point where the annual day, the annual function was entirely manned by children backstage. They got the audio visuals. Of course, the costumes were given to be stitched to someone who knew it, but they had a say in that. They wrote a few scenes for the plays. There was a production team which would kind of course it's an excuse for them to bunk classes also, but that's also a major reason why I did plays through school and college, and I completely understood where they came from. But we were broadening the net. So the theatre is being done a great service when they understand that it's not only about acting. There's a lot of work that's going into making that actor look good on stage. So the only things I think that I operated as director were the lights, because the lights were extremely complicated and there was no time to train. In India, there's no time to get a theatre and then kind of take a child for 2 days, and it's too expensive and the theatres are booked. So you can't actually train them on the technical aspects. And we've had 4 annual functions where everything has been handled by the children. It's been a great success. It's my little laboratory of liberal indoctrination, because the children are being sensitized, they're getting to learn to work with differences in a team. They're also learning to appreciate that, oh, maybe this kid who I looked down upon because he wasn't good at acting and I was getting all the acting roles, is brilliant at organization or is brilliant at designing or can really sing well. And it's come to a point where I don't have a professional repertory of the standard that I have with certain schools and the school work I do. Because when the schools understand that, oh, there's something happening, even the teachers kind of get completely enthused. And it's a beautiful environment to work with in schools. And it's also a way for me to kind of rediscover my enjoyment. I had a great time doing theatre as a child. I had great teachers who nurtured this talent, not in the sense of me becoming an actor someday. It was always an extracurricular activity and non-evaluated. But look where I landed up at the end of it all. Incidentally, I am still in touch with the school principal in St. Anson's Ajmer. I happened to bump into him in Jaipur when we went to perform The Boy Who Stopped Smiling, the first version. And there's a scene in the play where I jump into the audience as Malhar and I go and kiss any audience member, and I said, goodness me, that looks like my school principal from 15 years ago, and I went and kissed him, and he was so overwhelmed that he's invited every single play of mine from then on to the new school that he's running in Jaipur. So I have a running relationship with kids in Jaipur because of whatever karma. Whatever, I call it karma. Okay. And a kiss. Sealed with a kiss. So it's important for children to understand that there can be a multidisciplinary approach to work, to creating things, to appreciating each other's strengths and weaknesses, to being part of a team. There are all theatre games and exercises which we use ourselves as professional actors, which we use with the children, and they come out tops with them with less inhibition and more understanding, instinctive understanding than we professional actors do, because we have a lot of layers added on to us as we go along, and it's difficult for us to be genuine in the moment many a time. There have also been points where parental expectation has also kind of been allayed, because they actually see their children coming home and talking about an aspect of the play they're part of, which they never did in the previous years. It was always about getting on stage. And then the parents complained, oh, but my boy, he was a tree in the corner. Now, if you want 1,000 people to be on stage in an hour, somebody's got to play the tree. But instead of being a tree, if he's part of the production team, then he's doing a really important job, he or she, without feeling belittled or without being poked fun at or by his peers or by his parents or whatever. So this, in a word, in a nutshell, is what I've been trying to do with children. But these are mostly schools which have an understanding of theatre. There have been a few instances where I've gone to, say, a BMC school, Now there's this one work, it's very simple theatre exercise I do. I've not been able to work, maybe it's my own failing, much more with children from this stratum of society, which may be municipal schools or things like that. Maybe it's an area that I will continue to explore myself. There's a simple exercise where the children are asked to move at random around in the room. Has that come off? And they are supposed to walk at random in the school, in the room, a large room, no furniture. And when I say stop, they stop. When I say go, they go. They're supposed to walk at random. And these children from the BMC school kept walking in single file, trooping from one end of the hall to the other end of the hall. And there was no language problem, because there were two instructors. I was talking in Hindi and Marathi, and so was the other person. It wasn't a language problem. They just couldn't break out of walking in a line, because that is how we are educated. You step out of line and, well, you step out of line. You know, I had them only for a very short 2 or 3 days. By the end of it, they did manage to enjoy the theatre games, but they were going back to the reality of that system. So this is literally a clash of cultures. Now, how do I integrate my art form to a point where it's not seen as something esoteric or irrelevant? The second unusual workshop that I would like to mention from time to time is when I worked with a remand home in Bangalore. It's called a House of Correction, or it used to be called a remand home then for juvenile delinquents. These were kids who had really tough backgrounds. They're in for all kinds of pretty serious crimes. I was with them for 3 days, and it was unbelievable. The amazing hunger they had for self-expression. Even the simplest little theatre game that I would throw at them, there would be 10 kids jumping in saying, me, let me do it. You know, and there would be one child who would come, and the next day the child would not be there, and I would ask, so why hasn't this child come? And there would just be a shrug on the shoulders. I have no clue whether that child had been sent somewhere else, or whether that child had been taken for a hearing, or whether that child had been claimed by parents or foster parents or whatever. The need for identity, the need to express themselves through talent. I've never felt so inadequate over the short time I had with these children. I felt that these are the kids who could actually, but the system is such that, like I said, in those 3 days I had a changing class almost every single day. There was not a single child who attended that workshop for 3 days. There's not enough time to touch on this for now. Can I just play you one clip from a student production of A Midsummer Night's Dream? If you're familiar with it, I'd like to point it out because this play had a budget and an auditorium bigger than anything that I can dream of in my professional practice myself, and facilities. It was done at St. Andrews. There's a huge LED screen behind. It has all the lights and all the sound equipment. But what is most amazing is the understanding that these children developed for Shakespeare, not just at the intellectual level, but also to speak the language without being overawed by it or without sounding like parrots. And if you're familiar with the theme of the play, there are 3 groups: the fairies, the lovers, and the workers. These workers want to present a play on the wedding day of their king, and now this is the final scene where they are making a complete hash of what is technically considered a good performance. But Shakespeare in himself, and the kids understood the fact that this is Shakespeare commenting within his play in a play about good art and bad art and what can be considered art. And the children really, really connected not only to the theme of the scene in the play, but also actually performing it. So let's just have a look.
Look inside. Oh, night with you, so black. Oh, night with your heart, one day is not. Oh, night, on. Deceiving me is Frisbee's cue to enter, and I am to spire through the wall. You shall see. It will fall flat as I told you. Yonder she comes. La 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 la. Oh wall, often hast thou heard my moan, for parents my fair parents and me. My fairy lips have often kissed thy stones with life and head it up in thee. I see a voice. Now will I do the chink to hear my Frisbee's face. Frisbee, my love, thou art my love. I think what thou wilt. I am thy lover's grace. Oh, kiss me through the hole of the swine wall. I kiss the wall whole, not your lips at all. Wilt thou meet me at Minnie's tomb straight away? That life, thy death, I come without delay. Thus have I worn my path this dark, and being done, away was that go. Now the mule down between the two neighbors. Do it every my lord, when walls are so willfully round our morning. This is the silliest stuff that I've ever heard. The best in this kind are but shadows, and the worst are no words, it's imagination of itself. It must be your imagination there, and not theirs. We imagine no worse of them than they of themselves. They may pass for excellence. My daughter, that is dog my dog. La 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 la. This is all I need too. Where is my love? Roar! Ah! Well, so lies. Well, runs his feet, well showed moon, truly the moon shines with a good grace. Well, mouse lion, and then came pyramids, and showed that I married. Sweet food, I thank thee for thy study deeds. I thank thee, moon, for shining now so bright. For by the gracious golden glittering stream, I rush to take a true Frisbee sight. But stay, oh spite, but mark, poor night, oh dainty duck, oh dear, eyes, do you see, how can it be, thy mantle good, blessed, stained with blood, a thirsty fury fell, cut thread and thrum, quail, crush, conclude and quell. This passion and the death of a dear friend would go near to make a man sad. Wish you my heart, but I pity the man. Oh, wherefore, angel, didst thou that frame? Since life my heart demand, my dear, which is, which was the fairest name that lived, that loved, that liked, that looked with cheer. Soft tears confound, out, soaring moon, the map of pyramids, I that left back, where had the home, thus I, thus. Now am I dead? Now am I dead? My soul is in the sky. Come, lose thy light, moon, take thy flight. Now I die.
Okay. Any questions now? You have anything to ask? That incident, you were not supposed to remember that. I wanted to try. Okay, I'll tell you what the incident was, because it also informed my understanding of what it is doing theatre for children and how demanding it can be. We had a show at a school, I won't take the name of the school, and it was a nightmare from the first 5 minutes onwards for 2 hours. Because they were older children, firstly, and they had come to have a bit of a good time and whatever, but the sound system failed. And so they couldn't hear a thing of what we were saying beyond the first 2 rows. And because they were 8th, 9th, 10th standard students, and this was the boy who stopped smiling, they started creating a bit of a ruckus, and then the ruckus grew to a point where there were 2 separate universes. There was something that was going on stage, and there was something that was happening in the audience, and there was zero connection between what was happening. But there was one particular boy who'd been going on and on and on heckling us from the first 5 minutes to the point where I got so frustrated in the second act that during a song, thinking it would go unnoticed, I took a bit of a move and I showed him my middle finger on stage. And it is something that I deeply regret for the rest of my life. He noticed it, no one else luckily did. I was deeply frustrated as an actor at that point in time because we were just not being able to reach out to them. But it wasn't exactly their fault because they couldn't hear what we were saying. It was also a learning curve for me because I said, forget your set design, forget your wonderful lights, forget your costumes. If 1,000 kids cannot hear you, there's no point in doing theatre for them. So anywhere we travel, anywhere we perform, the first thing and sometimes the last thing that I get, sometimes we have shows at 9 a.m. in the school ground, playground. They say, no, this is, you can't have an evening show. Lights are, okay, do the play without lights. Now the option is to reach out or to stick to, so I can do a play with 100 lights and I can do a play with sunlight also, has been the driving force that children's theatre is concerned. And the second thing which when I did Once Upon a Tiger is, I humbly told my cast about this incident and I said, however hard a time they're giving you, you just have to grin and bear it and smile through it all. Which was, I think, when I genuinely started enjoying doing theatre for children. Because till then I was just an actor doing a very successful play, The Boy Who Stopped Smiling, which was directed by someone and produced by someone and I was doing the main role. A bit of growing up and becoming hopefully some kind of a role model. See, I told you I shouldn't have told you that incident. There was a hushed silence when I said what I did. Yes.
When the kids come to you, they still come with a very strong discipline. Like as you said, they walk in a straight line, and you help them to break that mold. So if they've been with you for some time, is there a time when they also tell you maybe we can do the scene in this way?
Yes, of course. They tell us that all the time. Yeah, they're given that freedom to express themselves. All they need to do, because otherwise we all talk at the same time and we have very limited time with them in the school and whatever, is that we try to tell them, just put your hand up, you're interested in listening to everyone. So they're welcome. Slowly what happens is, if it's a longer process, the instructors, the teachers start fading into the background. We start enabling them to take over things themselves to a point where I've had workshops where by day 8 or 10 with Junoon, I was told to say, okay, now we have a presentation for the parents, so we'll put a chair for you in this corner, you sit here and watch. And I'm saying like, okay, you guys are sure? I said, yeah, we're sure, we don't need you anymore, you sit there. I said, okay, and I said, and I watched the presentation from start to finish of the process that they have gone through over 8-10 days, whatever it is. And it's wonderful because I think that stays with them longer than being taught in that sense. Yes?
What I wanted to ask you was, you've spoken about how teaching theatre in the school is a multidisciplinary approach because it does more than just be actors. Now, obviously, in the process, they're learning things that go beyond just the learning of theatre.
Yes, they're learning life skills.
Absolutely. That's one aspect that probably echoes then in different things that they do, even in different classes.
Yes.
What I wanted to know is also, is there a bridging between theatre and other subjects? Because school life is so compartmentalized that there's no relationship seen between history and geography, although the two of them are intrinsically linked.
Yes.
Right? And between science and language and all that. But in theatre, are you able to bridge the gap between different subjects, and is there any attempt to do so?
It's a tricky one because sometimes I've had educators and teachers in schools say, can you devise something which will, through theatre, which will make mathematics lessons more interesting? And I say, I'm sorry, but that would require a year of thought, or maybe 2 years of thought, and a completely alternative approach to designing your syllabus and then training your teachers to execute that. There are no ready-made, it's easier to do that with language or with history, because you can dramatize, or the teacher can say, okay, you play X character from history and you play Y character, and so the lesson will go down easier. So what my takeaway and what I try to give to them is, look, if you're through this process, there are students who are becoming more aware, alert and sensitive, then hopefully automatically you have better students and better citizens who will be better and at whatever else that is, that their attention spans may increase. They may develop a capability to listen or to pay attention more, or articulate, or have the confidence to take their time over something and to understand something. But it's very difficult to have a direct correlation, especially with the science subjects. It requires a lot of thought. I haven't gone there yet. Yes.
Effort also goes into choosing a play with a more thinking message. Do you keep that a lot of effort?
When I'm doing a play for children or with children?
For children, when you're choosing a
When
play.
I, as a professional
Yeah.
theatre person, am doing a play for children, there's always some kind of a message and a reason and an underlying subliminal, subversive message to all the theatre I do for children also. Because it's informed by forum and grips theatre, which takes real life issues and makes them entertaining. But the idea is not to preach just dazzle them with stagecraft, but the message is subliminal, so it stays with them. They think about it when they leave the theatre. I want them to think about my play ideally for the rest of their lives. That's the way I try to design my work. So Once Upon a Tiger talks about big business and politicians selling out the forests, trampling over tribal rights or destroying forests. But there is a character in the play who is a politician, who is a father of one. So the children are made agents of change in Once Upon a Tiger. Or the world is seen from the child's perspective in Day I Met the Prince. Or the child is making the connection between a dubious role model and a better role model in, say, the Kachra Tales. There is an effort in that sense.
Now I understood right. You're multitask. You're the actor, you're the producer, you're the director, the light, the sound. All of that encompasses with you alone.
Well, I have a great team around me. Most of the time I've been blessed to have people around me who've supported and who've delivered effortlessly. But a lot of ideation does come from the director. So when I am the director, it's kind of and I have a bunch of actors who I worked with for 15 years now. It's not a repertory company because it's impossible to run a repertory in Bombay. The economics, they're all freelancers. But I tap into them, and if they're free and if they're interested, I work with them on a regular basis over a period of time. So there is a system in place. There are people who are on the same wavelength. They come in, they work with me, I take their suggestions, and beyond the point, after I've explained what my idea is, I don't interfere at all. It's up to them.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best that you will spread much more throughout the week.
Thank you so much. Yes. Sorry, I'll try to.
I've seen most of your plays, and the one I want to refer to is the performance of the boy who stopped smiling, which you did at the Jawan Center for 2 years back also.
Yes.
Now, it was an amazing performance because most of the tickets were distributed free of cost by some trust.
Yes.
So as it so happened, although it was a children's play, about 80% of the audience was adult,
Yes.
and about 20% or maybe even less the children. But the surprising thing to me in the audience, what was happening, was that in the course of the play, many of the adults had left. The children were all still sitting there. And it also so happened that, and there were times that all the children were laughing, but no adult was.
Yes.
Often the children were sitting at scattered places. But there was something which was appealing to them in the humor or whatever of the play, which struck a chord with them, but didn't seem to strike a chord with the adults. Now I was wondering, as adults, you're writing the plays for the kids, and what's the connect you're making with the kids, which some of the adults didn't seem to be getting, And is it that it's really two different theatres, one for kids, one for adults?
Can I be honest? It's not that the adults aren't getting it, but I do use my plays for children to take pot shots at adults occasionally, to examine their attitudes towards parenting, towards children, the top-down approach of talking to kids or dealing with issues. And The Boy Who Stopped Smiling is very pointedly about a child's dream and parents not agreeing with that dream at all. So it does make parents squirm sometimes, the kind of plays that I choose to do. Once Upon a Tiger was a play that was enjoyed by parents and children equally. But The Boy Who Stopped Smiling does kind of, because it's from the Grips format, it does very pointedly side with children and sees children. So a number of parents could kind of recognize themselves in that situation. We were probably doing a bit of a reality check. Oh, do I behave this way with my children? Probably it's a little more of discomfort than disinterest. Yes, you had a question.
Hi, my name is Hiren and I'm coming from a local newspaper, Kolaba and beyond. So my question is that do you have a future, a vision for plays or theatre in India? And also, what is the financial viability if a person wants to take up theatre as a career? And how do you
My strategy is to go smaller and smaller instead of going bigger and bigger, which is to get into as many small nooks and corners as I can and keep doing stuff. So go to more schools, do smaller plays which can travel easier instead of doing one blockbuster which sticks to one theatre because it can't travel. And the future of the financial future is something that maybe you and I could discuss over a coffee or a glass of beer. And it's a long, vast topic for which we need to have another session. Yeah, so we could chat afterwards. Sure? You have a question, yes.
Yeah. Is it easy to do Shakespeare with children? These are pretty young children, so were they able to learn the lines properly?
Learning is never a problem in our country because it's still rote. The problem is to tell them not to learn up the lines in the first 3 days and instead to get into the process of just enjoying it without looking at the end result and discovering things. Because otherwise they learn up the line in 3 days and sound like parrots and I have to deal with them for a month because that's how much time it takes to put a school play with 500 children in it or 1,000 children. There was another school where I did 5 shows on the trot over 5 days with 2 rotating teams of 2,000 kids each. And every kid had to be on stage. So it was a 2.5-hour annual day, after which team B would come and do a 2.5-hour annual day. It was a full, I was camping at this theatre and whatever. But that's a separate scenario, but given when I have reasonable artistic control, if you could call it that, the idea is to make the children speak the lines aloud instead of going for the rhyme. For example, in Shakespeare, the tendency is to follow the break of line, to go for the rhyme. I said, forget your speaking Shakespeare, forget your speaking poetry. You can stop whenever there's a full stop. Understand what you're saying, and then later on the poetry will come back to you. Don't recite at the cost of making sense. Which is why you could vaguely... This was still not blank verse. There are some segments where the children are absolutely brilliant. When the lovers come in, because they speak the language of the royals, and they're talking flawless Shakespeare, of course with an Indian accent, and I'm not one to foist any kind of accent onto anyone. The school is multicultural, multilingual. You can speak Punjabi English, Marathi English, Gujarati English, whichever English you want. But the idea is for them to enjoy it. And in the last 7-8 days, 3 days, to finally concretize the performance the way they want. Anything else? Yes.
As an actor, does creative satisfaction differ when you're doing a children's play and when you're doing, say, a postcard from a model? If so, how much?
Well, the audience is different. The demands are different. Quite frankly, for children's theatre, you need to be much more alert and much more on your toes than for an adult audience. The sensibility is different. My plays aren't easy. Even my plays for children aren't easy viewing in that sense. They're not entertaining in the obvious way. So we do put in an extra effort. Even my rehearsals are concerned. 2 months of rehearsal, going over things, and we're constantly evolving the play as it's going on. But you need to be on your toes, and you can't breeze in and breeze out of a children's performance like say you could with an adult audience. Adult audiences are also more forgiving. Okay, now I bought a ticket and I have to have dinner a little later. So even if I'm not liking the play, I'll kind of sit through it because I have nowhere else to go. It's also conditioned a lot by the cinema that you watch. You go to a multiplex, you spend 300 bucks, and it's a fait accompli. You have no choice. But children aren't very forgiving. And also, I mean, I love kids, so I want to do a good job for them. And so does everyone else on my team. At the bottom of all this is a very selfish motive. I like kids, so I like engaging with them. They energize me as much as hopefully I give to them. There's no grander scheme more than my selfishness. It's a nice selfishness, don't worry. I give you nice plays to watch. Anything else? Anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you and you for coming. And you for coming.
Thank you.